Welcome back to Betoota Talks. The election is not far away. You're joined by myself, Clancy Overall, and editor-at-large, Errol Parker. And today's guest is, I think, doing their first ever podcast. First ever long-form interview with a camera on. Thank you for joining us. Foreign Minister Penny Wong.
G'day, Clancy. How are you?
Well, thanks. You probably don't do this in TV even. I'm sure you've done a lot of long interviews with print journalists.
How long are we here for?
Look, we'll see when we run out of steam.
Half an hour to 45.
Yeah, no, this is probably longer form than I usually do. That's right.
What is taking up most of your time as the Australian Foreign Minister in autumn 2025?
Apart from the election.
Well,
there's the election. That's probably taking up most of my time now. Well, it's a pretty different world, isn't it? Like if you think about like when I first got the job, I thought, we got a fair bit to do with China. And then things have just got a bit more complicated since we were elected. Obviously, very different US administration, very different president. So navigating that's probably the thing you think about a lot. Yeah, but look, we've been pretty focused on the region, as you know. Yeah,
it was interesting last year at the Betoota races. We had a lot of our locals come in from the properties around town, and a lot of them were happy. They said that these are people who would vote for David Littleproud as the local member, and David does good work for us out here in Western Queensland. But they were saying that they would vote for the Labor Party if you were the leader.
I reckon you're making that
No,
up. I reckon you're making that
I'll
up.
tell you, another time it happened was we were out west at a country races during the Lib spill, right? 2018. Turnbull, ScoMo, Julie Bishop. And one guy said, why don't they make Penny Wong the Prime Minister? I said, well, because she's a senator in the federal opposition.
And she's on the other side.
She's on the other side.
There's a slight problem.
But that is one question we want to ask. You seem to have a lot of support from people that have never met anyone like you before. You know what I mean? You're first of all, you're a South Australian. And these bushy, what is it that you do that you can kind of have a kind of bipartisan kind of profile in Australian politics? Because everyone else is playing left and right.
Maybe you should ask them, eh?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I was probably just hanging around a long time. Like I've been in Parliament a fair bit. I don't know. I get that a little. I get people who say, I'm a Liberal but I like you. I also get a lot of people saying the opposite. Yeah. But, I try to answer the question most of the time. Yeah. I try to play it reasonably kind of straight. That's quite a funny joke from me, isn't it? Straight bat. So I guess sometimes people like that, don't they? Yeah.
Well, you is it longest serving female in the cabinet?
Hey, you know how I found that out? Because I didn't know. It's quite sweet, actually. Amanda Vanstone rang my office to tell me that, and did it on radio, that I'd become the longest serving woman in an Australian cabinet, because I think I'd passed her.
Oh, that's how she'd know.
Yeah, but I hadn't clocked it at all, so it was kind of funny. Yeah.
So, you've always been a team player and you've had a few different, cabinet positions. Is Foreign Minister something you always kind of wanted to take the reins on?
Yeah, it is. I mean, if you'd sort of talked to young Penny when she came in and if she dared to talk to you about what she might want, I pretty much got the jobs that I wanted, I would have liked. But I didn't, you don't think you'll get them necessarily, but I'm leader of the government in the Senate and Foreign Minister, so that's pretty good.
You've got a few firsts, right? Like, I mean, there's obviously first Asian Australian cabinet. I imagine first openly gay politician in Parliament. I might be wrong there.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. Because Bob Brown came out after I did.
Yeah.
Well, I was always out, right? So I think he came out after I arrived.
What's it like kind of being all these firsts? That's the question. Does it motivate you, or do you just wish people...
Because you love getting questions about them.
Yeah, well, that's it. No, but I'm just saying, would you prefer that you get treated like the less groundbreaking old men that you kind of came up alongside?
I don't think I ever wanted to be a less groundbreaking old bloke. But sometimes I got a bit kind of sick of, stressed by the questions early on about about which were focused on being female or Asian or gay or being a lesbian, and because you sort of want to talk about, I wanted to talk about foreign policy or national security policy or economic policy or environment policy, and people just kept wanting to talk about me.
Yeah.
And I did sort of encounter some people who were just totally journos who were totally focused on the difference. They're fixated. I'm like, mate, just relax. Yeah. I remember one bloke asked me something. I said, "Do you ask John Howard, what it's like to be married and straight?"
Be a Methodist.
So, but I kind of worked out later that it meant something to other people. Yeah. So it was actually less about me. You know what I mean? So I did this thing at RMIT. And all these young women came up afterwards, most of them from a sort of Asian heritage, so Malaysian like me, Malaysian or Chinese, but more broadly South Asian as well. And I realised for them what it meant, because it meant they could be different, they could do something. So I thought I eased into it a bit more after that.
Do you think that kind of forces you to be more competent than, say, people who by virtue of where and who they were born to can come into Parliament?
I think that's one of those trap questions, isn't it, really?
Well...
No, I don't think you intended...
excellence.
No, I think... what do I think? I think two things. One is I think people probably clock you more because not as many people look like you, right?
Yeah.
I think that probably the margin for error is less. Yeah. And I don't want to... Because as soon as I say that, like... This Liberal yelled at me the other day, don't hide behind your gender. And I'm not trying to do that, but I do think there's sort of less kind of flex. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's easier to blend into the wallpaper when you look like Mark Coulton as opposed to...
I don't know what he looks like.
That's good.
That's
very good.
It's perfect.
Which one?
What about being the first from back home to do what you've done? Like, less about you as a person, but Sleepy Adelaide, right?
I thought you meant Malaysia, not Sleepy Adelaide.
I wasn't.
Where
are you really from?
He's taking down Adelaide.
No, I'm just wondering. Okay. It's fair to say 1980s Adelaide was not as bustling as it is now during the Fringe Festival.
We had such a good start. No.
Yes, I'm firing shots now.
Yeah, you are.
What drove you to kind of why didn't you become the local Glenelg vet?
I originally wanted to become a doctor, but because I did maths, physics and chemistry in year 12 and got into medicine because that's what good Chinese daughters do. And then I was like, oh, I don't want to do this. Oh my God, what am I doing this for? I had a pretty rough time when we arrived from Malaysia, and I think you do two things. You've got a few choices with that. One of them is you can decide you're going to try and change things for the better. And so I think I always had that. How I was going to do it wasn't something I sort of worked out when I was 8. But yeah, eventually I decided I think I'll try and go into Parliament. I was involved in the Labor Party and stuff. So
I imagine the Labor Party was a very different place back then.
It was a very different place.
Did it need a bit of work?
It was a very different place. Yeah, it was. But it was being part of this generation that has seen the party change so much has been quite actually inspiring and heartwarming, because if I think about where we were and how many women were in Parliament and how culturally diverse we weren't, and I look at our caucus now and I think, we over half women, and we have all these people from culturally diverse backgrounds in.
2 Malaysians now, 2.
Doubled the Malaysian caucus. Yeah, he's got to win again, Sam, because,
yes.
It's fantastic actually.
Can we talk about your journey from disenfranchised medical student to getting on the South Australian Labor upper house ticket?
Sure.
Where did it start?
What did I do? Decided I didn't want to do medicine, thought I don't know what I want to do. I spent a year overseas in Brazil on a student exchange scholarship, which was, really good for me, and I learned a lot, including that I worked in some hospitals and thought this is a bad idea, really don't want to do this.
It's a hell of a place.
Yeah, and came back.
Baptism of fire?
Yeah, I got involved in student politics. I wasn't going to, and then I remember the Labor Party actually introduced HECS, which I didn't agree with at the time, and I remember I was demonstrating outside, like the state convention, Labor Party convention, and the left inside won a vote by 2 or 3 votes. I remember thinking, oh, it probably would have been more useful to be inside anyway, so I joined the Labor Party.
Oh, okay, so protesting.
Yeah, I went, right.
I mean, that's a great motivator, right, to get inside the system. I want to kind of talk about mentors. That's a big thing, and I'm sure you're mentoring a lot of young people in politics now. Who was the first kind of guiding light you saw in politics? I know Albo's spoken about Tommy Uren, Malcolm Turnbull's spoken about Neville Wran,
and Kerry Packer. Howard talked about Menzies.
Yep, Tony Abbott spoke about Alan Jones. But who
he made that last bit up, didn't he?
Who was your guiding light?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I was the generation that thought of used the word mentor much in your head. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there were, I looked up to Hawke, obviously, Keating, because particularly the focus on Asia, Susan Ryan because of what she'd done, Joan Kerner. There were women, Jenny Macklin. So, there were a lot of, and then John Faulkner, who was the Senate leader when I came in, and he kind of mentored me a fair bit, and looked after me. So I was pretty lucky. I had a lot of people who I could look up to and learn from. Yeah.
Now, we spend so much time, as you said, journalists fixate on certain parts of your personal identity. We don't get to actually know all the things about you that other politicians get to share willingly. We know that Albo has a dog called Toto. We know that he likes the Rabbitohs, and we, Scott Morrison forced his personal interests.
Yeah, there was
upon us.
a lot, wasn't it? It was a lot.
Are you? I mean, I've heard you're a cricket fan. Would it be fair to say Alan Border was like a childhood hero?
Yeah. So when I came here from Malaysia, my mum she passed away, but she was from a family of 5 who grew up in the Adelaide Hills. So she's a farm girl. And one of my aunts was a sports fanatic, and she said that part of learning about Australian culture coming from Malaysia is I had to learn about footy, which was AFL, and cricket. And so she used to take me. I actually texted her and said, which was the first test at Adelaide you took me to? She thought it was the 79 test series against the Windies. So she used to take me to test cricket at Adelaide Oval before it was all done up.
Yeah.
And we'd sit under the big trees down one end and take a whole chook. She'd put beer into the thermos illegally. I shouldn't probably say that on radio. She might get in trouble all these years later. And we'd watch the cricket, and it was fantastic. So I really enjoyed that time, and I got really angry when Cricket Australia moved the test from the long weekend to the December week because I can never go, basically, because it's usually between 2 weeks of Parliament.
Yeah, right. And just while we have you on that, what are your footy clubs? What do you kind of just get that out because you don't wear scarves?
No, I don't. I just sort of don't. I guess I've been pretty private, haven't I?
You're trying to hedge Adelaide, aren't you?
I am. I'm a Port supporter, and I'm a Port supporter for a really weird reason. So I lived at a place called Coromandel Valley, which is in Adelaide Hills, when I first came to Australia, and everybody was a Sturt supporter then. Everyone was a double blues, and there was one kid who was a Port supporter. And she was my mate, and she was my mate in the face of actually people being quite racist. So I was like, all right, I'm with them.
Okay.
So there you go.
What have you?
Yeah. So I'm But I got to be honest, I watch probably more soccer now.
Yeah.
Because my daughter plays club soccer, so we tend to just watch a lot of soccer. Matilda's tonight.
It's booming too.
I really thought you were about to bring up the Adelaide Rams. They're
rest in peace
in the Super League. That was probably the first and last time you'd ever see Rupert Murdoch trying to kick a football on the Adelaide Oval.
He brought chubby checkers down from America to wear the Adelaide Rams jersey. Lachlan and Rupert were in Adelaide trying to promote this football team.
Right.
That was playing on an oval in front of people who didn't understand the rules.
No, we don't. We don't understand the rules.
Imagine if that had taken off, though. I mean, you've got one of Adelaide's great gifts to the Western world in Rupert Murdoch, and yeah, look, if only his sport had worked out, he probably would have been like, I don't need to go to America or England.
I reckon I might just take the fifth on this one. But you reckon?
Okay. All right, let's go back to your personal life. I've heard you're a foodie.
I am a
said that.
foodie. Yeah, no, you see, Malaysians are pretty obsessed with food. Yeah, I think I remember, it's a sort of like my town in Malaysia, Kota Kinabalu, it's a sort of place, and this is not unusual in Malaysia, where, everybody knows what is good at which time. So, the fish balls are really good at this cafe or this stall. In the mornings everybody goes there, and then the char siu bao come out at 4:00 at this time, and so everybody goes to get the char siu bao. So I think food is really important. And my younger brother Toby, who was a chef, he used to say you can make yourself feel happy 3 times a day.
Yeah.
And I often think about that. I think about that campaigning. I'm like, right, we're going to have something good to eat.
Yeah.
Where's
the best fish balls in this regional town?
Yeah, well, it's I actually took the press there. So when I went back as foreign minister,
I wanted to ask you about that. That was a bit of a homecoming.
it was, it was kind of surprisingly emotional. I kind of thought, I should do this. It would be really good to go back to our hometown, where I was born, where my brothers and sisters were born, where Dad and Mum lived, and where my grandmother was, and all of this kind of stuff that we migrated from. And I thought, and my younger brother still lives there, and I thought it'd be good to do that, and I'll do that, and I'll go to Kuala Lumpur and I'll give a big speech there. That's the more formal thing. But I go back to KK, and I hadn't kind of clocked that it'd be quite an emotional thing. And it was. Yeah. And I was like, ooh. Yeah.
There are some great spots for Malaysian food which are quite famous around the country. I mean, down there in Sydney, you've got Neptune's Palace. They do a great char kway teow.
There you go.
Malacca Straits.
You've got that famous spot in the food court up there in Darwin that does that laksa.
Yeah,
Auntie's, yeah. I've had it. It's delicious.
Darwin is really good for food.
And then there's a great nasi lemak in Sunnybank in Brizzy.
Yeah, plenty of them. Ben's Vietnamese karaoke. I'm sure the Labor Party have taken you out there in Brisbane. It's actually Malaysian, but they say Vietnamese and Chinese and Asian food.
Oh, right. Yeah. So it's like one of those, Pan-Asian kind of, like a lot of regional Australia. Yeah.
I want to talk to you about, the job you have, and I imagine is it hard? Tell us that. Is it hard, and has it gotten harder since you took the job? Since that, the pleasantries of, winning government and then becoming foreign minister and that stuff, and then all of a sudden it kicks off, and it's kicking off all over the place.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it is. It's a privilege, and it's an extraordinary thing to do with your life. But yeah, I think external circumstances have made it harder. If you think about where the world is now, in terms of where the number of conflicts we've got, competition between the great powers, China and the US, how China is much more assertive. The Trump administration envisaging a different America. I mean, there's a lot of change in the world, right? So to try and keep calm, keep calm and carry on, but actually think about, well, how do we find our way through this? And like a lot of people, I'm a working parent too. Trying to manage how I get home and actually do some of the washing and see my children and my wife. That can be a bit challenging.
How often are you out of the country?
I've been out of the country a fair bit. I try to get back for weekends. Yeah. Like I said to DFAT, the Foreign Affairs Department, I said when I got the job, I said, I'm prepared to work really hard, but I'm not prepared to have a divorce and not prepared to never see my kids. So we're coming back for weekends. And I sort of try to do that. Has meant getting up at 3 a.m. to leave Korea to get back in time for dinner for Friday night. But most of the time we manage that. Yeah. So that's been good. Yeah.
It's an interesting thing because we have all this stuff happening elsewhere in the world. And obviously, that's your job to deal with all that and look at that and at least
on our behalf,
be aware of it.
That's it.
But in Australia, we've got a federal election happening, and we've got domestic politics, which of late, and I think really ramped up in the pandemic, we've seen just such an increase in the culture wars. You know what I mean? It distracts from a lot of things, but we kind of have trans rights, Aboriginal flags, woke schools, yada, 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 all that stuff. Is this a new thing, or is someone who's been in longest serving cabinet minister, female cabinet minister, has this always been around?
I think it's just Peter Dutton doing what John Howard did, is you try and pick a fight in order to define yourself and so that people don't ask you what you're really going to do.
Yeah, right.
Frankly, that's
Fair
it.
enough.
It's just end of story.
Just throwing dead cats on the table.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, you remember the fight over the apology or the black armband view of history or whatever, the fight over school curriculum. I think we all know he wants to talk about that because he wants to define himself on those grounds, because he doesn't want to talk about cuts to Medicare, doesn't want to talk about $600 billion of nuclear reactors, all of that kind of stuff. But can I go back to the world? It's not just me dealing with this. I mean, the government and Albo, he's had to be a prime minister in a time where we've got to navigate a pretty different world. He's the thing that is, and he's a mate of mine. There are many things that I think are really great about him. Doesn't forget where he came from, but he's also really disciplined and really firm about the direction he wants to take, and that's been he's good to work with.
That's the funny thing, right? With the referendum, is this an example of that? And the referendum looked like it was going to fail. Everyone who was supporting it had hope, but back to the culture wars, that's what it turned into. The opponents turned it into that. Albo had the chance to pull the pin on that. Early days before we'd even seen, before all the confusion set in. If you don't know, vote no. But is that what you're saying there? He said he was going to do it.
Yeah, he's not a pull the pin kind of guy.
Yeah, so he's going to wear it, and he's going to wear the bark getting taken off him by the opponents.
He thought it was the right thing to do, and a lot of the First Nations leaders wanted the opportunity. So, look, I think we'll look back on it in 10 years' time, and it'll be a bit like marriage equality, don't you reckon? Like I always used to say, marriage equality, which took us such a bloody fight to get that done. And I thought, all this fuss, it'll become something. It'll be like people go, do we have an argument about that? They won't even like it. Kids today or even adults today barely kind of clock that it used to be an issue. Yeah. Remember how big an issue that was in culture wars?
Yes. I remember Alan Joyce getting hit with a pie.
It's just endless.
But it was also a period of time of unprecedented peace around the world. Markets were going one direction, and that was up.
It was the age of innovation.
So people had to find something to gripe with. But just on personalities of world leaders. I mean, you spoke about Albo, about that he's quite a dogged person. When you meet with your contemporaries around the world, are you all typically on the same page with like, we're going to talk about this like adults, we're going to try and work this out, instead of sort of being like, there's no cameras in this boardroom, so we're just going to talk like
feet on the table
adults. I
mean, the purpose, the foreign minister job, and actually also leader to leader, if it can be like that, should be like that, shouldn't it? Like we should. Yes. I should have you try to have the relationship with your counterpart that enables you both to talk through the different interests you have. I don't mean like golf. That's actually not one of my interests, but the different things you want and the different concerns you got, and you're trying to manage them. And I try to go into those conversations and those relationships being curious about how they see the world and being open to them seeing the world. Because I think it's not much point walking in and kind of putting your worldview and your issues on the table. You've got to try and work out, like you and I got to work out, where's Errol,
Yeah.
Where's Clancy? What's he think? What's driving him? What are the things he wants to talk about? What are the things that worry him? How does he see the world? You got to kind of be curious about that. And that's where you can find the basis of the relationship that enables you then to go, I've got a problem here. Are you able to help us with it, or how do we resolve this?
How different are the meetings just on that? I mean, like you have been in the same room as some of the most powerful people around the world, but you've also been in a meeting with, say, the Foreign Minister of New Zealand, who might, turn up to a meeting in gumboots and jeans, covered in sheep poo, and then you're talking
didn't know we hoed into the Kiwis in this. Jeez. It's Winston, and he's always well dressed. He's like, I think he does a Windsor knot. Is that what
Winston
they're called?
Foreign Minister?
Yeah.
Oh, how exciting.
There you go.
The catter of New Zealand.
the Waikato Kata. Yeah, but
how different. What was the question?
If you're meeting, say, the trade minister if you're meeting the foreign minister for the United Kingdom and you're meeting Winston, do you take that same process into each?
I think I try to start with thinking about getting into their head a little bit in the sense of how do they see things and what do they want. So I try to do that. And then you try and find, areas of commonality and personal friendship. Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously with some counterparts it's easier than others, but...
Has anyone surprised you? Has it been like, man, these people love Australia and they're easy to work with?
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is sometimes the domestic political difference is not a barrier to having good relationship. Like I had a good relationship with James Cleverly, who was the Foreign Secretary of the UK, and he's a Conservative. Yeah. But, we had a pretty good rapport, as I do with David Lammy now, who's the current Foreign Secretary. So it isn't necessarily a political alignment domestically that enables you to have that kind of friendship or
it's just
connection.
More of a national interest.
I think Australians would appreciate hearing that you don't discount foreign ministers because of their political beliefs.
I think it's interesting the way in which you can have such a strong connection, professional and personal connection with somebody whose domestic political views are really quite different. Yeah. But you share a lot in terms of where you want to go.
Do you get that? Do you get that in Parliament? Are there any people that you surprised yourself by becoming friends with? I remember the Greens. We spoke to Larissa Waters, and she said she loves you guys. She loves the Labor women.
Oh, it's a pretty good group of Labor women. And that's actually I was quite good friends with Cormann. He was a lot. He's pretty right wing compared to me, but we sort of came to trust each other, leader to leader. So, he was, and he understood contained conflict. You know what I mean? So we have a blue over this, but we're not going to have a blue over everything. And I like to operate in that way. Not everybody does understand that.
Yeah.
Did you have?
Yeah, that's hard.
Like a cordial relationship with, your statemates in Chris Pine.
Christopher, look,
Alexander Downer,
Xenophon,
and Nick Xenophon.
Downer. No, I mean, Alex is just he's Adelaide gentry.
That's the tough thing.
He's just Adelaide gentry.
The toffs in Adelaide are toffs.
Yeah, or wannabe.
Yeah.
So
there's a big contrast.
Yeah,
in
no,
the types of politics.
he and I are not from the same place. No. Yeah. No. Christopher's kind of entertaining, isn't he? But he just, after a while, I think, enough jokes about yourself, Chris. Yeah. But he is very funny.
I've heard he's loving life now, the darling of the fringe.
There was a day that we saw him, and Clancy just gotten back from the gym, and he was wearing a shirt on the front of it.
This is not going to be good.
That said "bad boy."
This is not going to be good.
Chris was coming the other way, and he goes, "Hello, bad boy."
You did a very good impersonation, then, mate.
He does.
That was very good. That was very good.
It's just open your mouth. You're talking like you're from Adelaide.
Rounded vowels. This is a tricky question because they're not all going to be softballs here on the. We're mavericks at the Betoota Advocate, so we refuse to kind of bow to the political class. I want to ask, what do you regret in all of in the decisions you've made as minister in the longest serving career of a female minister in cabinet? Are there some things you regret and you're willing to own as a regret?
I'm not pausing because I haven't made mistakes, because I've made a lot of mistakes and I always try and learn from them. I regret voting for Mark Latham.
Yep.
I did that once.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was a newish.
And that was after he broke the taxi driver's arm.
Yeah, was it? I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
Thanks for reminding me.
it's like he has a bad temper. It's like, really?
Yeah, that's what we need to get rid of Howard.
Oh, yeah. So that was a big political error.
Yeah.
Yeah. But look, I say, well, a couple of things. One is it's not possible in this job or in any job really not to make mistakes. So you've got to just go, you're going to make mistakes. You got to learn from them. You got to manage them, and then you got to move on. And the second thing is, you've got to. I try to remember that, like in politics or life, your choice is between two available counterfactuals or more. Right? It's not between the abstract perfect and what you've done, and so you're already kind of in a suboptimal world. Yeah, you got to do what you can.
You're talking about keeping it calm and Albanese, for example, going through with everything he says he will do, and not forgetting where he's from,
Even to his detriment.
And you have a reputation of being very considered and not a reactionary politician, which is, I guess, what we want as a foreign minister. But in this day and age, particularly with social media and all of these different fractured ideologies that people are going down rabbit holes in, for whatever reason, calm can be viewed as weak. And that's, you see it around the world, this kind of mythologizing of strong men. How do you kind of navigate that world? Because Australians really do want to believe that they want leaders that are tough and shirt front. That we all know it didn't work out well for Abbott.
I was going to say that didn't work out.
It didn't work out well for him, but there's a little bit of that.
It doesn't really translate that well into Russian.
No,
shirt front.
It's like
he's going to run as fast as he can at you and put his arms up like this and push you off the ball.
You know what I say to my daughters? I say we don't make ourselves big by making other people small. Mm-hmm. And I reckon more of our political leaders and around the world should remember that.
How do you navigate that sentiment with needing to actually kind of get people up and about and get people riled up and the populist kind of Labor Party politics?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, there's a lot more. I guess I've never been that performative, right? And what you're identifying is a bit of a trend in culture and therefore politics, where performance becomes authenticity. And I don't think like that. I think that's not what shows or demonstrates or is evidence of authenticity. So, and we have a fair bit of that. So people want you to be really angry about something, whereas I get angry about the things I get angry about. So I guess I'd just try to be me. Maybe it's a bit, boring.
Oh, it's working for you. The surveys say it's working for you.
But it is like I just try to operate like me as I am, and sometimes that means when others are dialing up the culture wars or dialing up performance, I'm probably not quite there, but I just try and steer my own course. So.
Penny, you spoke about this being your dream job. There was one morning where I landed in LA very early in the morning. It was actually the same time that Foreign Minister Bob Carr he landed, but we were like the third plane in the morning, so the immigration line was an hour long. Bob cut straight to the front with this passport the size of like an iPad, and he was through. What are some cool things that you found becoming the foreign minister? What are some cool perks that the layperson such as I might not know about?
Well, you do get a diplomatic passport. Yeah, so that I suppose that's
cool.
That is. It means it's harder for them to arrest you and stuff like that. Yeah. So that's a good thing.
Is it true they can't look in your carry-on and stuff? Like you've got a diplomatic bag and stuff?
No, that's a different thing. Like the diplomatic bag, that's not carried by me. No, that people can check my stuff.
Oh, really? Like the King's Courier or something.
Yeah.
The rumours about the Vanuatuan princes bringing coke into Brisbane aren't true then.
Oh, really? I'm not going to answer that question.
It was 20 years ago.
Is it true? Is it true?
No, but obviously you've got a bigger office.
Actually, it's kind of funny. I've got the office of foreign ministers in and the leader of the government in. It's a good office, but Parliament House was built before. I think they thought there'd be fewer staff than there are. So you've been there, haven't you? Actually,
it's kind of small.
Yeah, the staff are pretty sort of cramped in.
It needs a $6 billion renovation. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm definitely not saying that.
Maybe we should build a bigger one inside Mount Ainslie.
We're not definitely.
So they're all
we're not
in a row.
In a row, like that sounds like some sort of
And
weird
then this Parliament House
dystopian future. That
can
sounds like
be the new museum of Australian
We
democracy.
can let sheep graze on the hill like was the original plan. Anyway, Penny, sorry, we're starting to riff now. Thank you.
I'm just going to be quiet.
I just want to talk lastly, tariffs.
Yay.
Yay. Were you expecting a bit more love there, or you thought it was pretty consistent with?
Yeah, I thought my kind of central assumption was the outcome. Mm-hmm. That's basically what I thought what happened would happen.
Yeah.
You probably know the answer to this.
Probably not.
The biggest export that Norfolk Island has to America is leather-made shoes. Leather-made sandals, sorry. I'm sorry.
Sandals?
Will these tariffs destroy Norfolk Island's burgeoning leather sandal industry?
29%.
I mean, and the US was the biggest buyer of Norfolk Island-made leather sandals.
Well, we got to go into Germany then, don't we?
Yes.
We got to be a competitor for Birkenstock, really.
That's another interesting part of your job. I mean, aside from making sure that wars don't break out and Australia's safe in that regard, you've also got to be the person who's kind of exploring different markets. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And leading into that last election, the Manurian candidate, the drums of war, the khaki election, he's
going to try it again.
Yeah,
I reckon.
well, with China, it's just
he'll try it again.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to have to think about, which I'm trying to figure out why they weren't thinking about that. If China increases their intake of wine by 1%, it empties every vineyard in Australia. That's a good market.
It's just a big market.
It's a big market.
Can I just remember the Manchurian candidate, when they called Richard Miles the Manchurian candidate, and I said to him, mate, don't worry about it. Nobody under 40 has any idea what that means.
No, I thought it meant like Manchester Soccer Club or something.
You didn't either?
Yeah.
I remember the movie, the remake.
With Denzel.
Yeah, with Denzel.
I haven't seen the remake.
Well, so they but it's set in America, and the whole time you're like, you could have just called this robot president, but they still kept the copyright, which was the Manchurian candidate, and everyone's like...
But what is that like, having to keep a couple of different logs in the fire, trying to diversify. And we all remember, particularly in Queensland, we remember the wool crash, right?
Yeah.
And how that was there was a paralysis of inaction in terms of markets, Are we friends with England? Are we friends with America? Now you've got to make the decision if we're friends.
Well, I think we've got to make our own way in the world, right? Yeah. And that can be, that can be something people get nervous about, but we've got to say, all right, what is the best way for Australia in an uncertain time to be most resilient, most able to weather change? Part of it is diversifying markets and products, okay? So we've worked pretty hard to get $20 billion worth of impediments on the Chinese market lifted. We've now got, and that has happened, and that's good, been good for lots of industries. As you say, it's a huge market. But I also keep saying to people, don't put all your eggs in one market.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Did you like that?
That's good. That's very good.
Yeah, it almost sounds like you. So we've been working hard to try and get people focused on Southeast Asia. That's going to be what, in Indonesia and the markets in Southeast Asia are going to be pretty big in 2030, 2040.
What are they buying?
India, etc. I think, obviously food and food products is something that we can do, and that those markets will continue to need. But we've got to look at that, how we, grow our exports into those markets, and we've done a lot of work on that with the Southeast Asian economic strategy. But whatever happens, I think we know that this is a different world now. So we've got to find our own way. I've just realised this is the same carpet as I had when I was growing up.
Really?
Yeah, there you go.
Well, we'll include
That's
a
why I
photo.
got distracted. I looked down. I was like, oh, it's like being in our living room when I was a kid.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, it's...
Where'd this come
Is
from?
it Persian?
Well, I don't think
know.
it's a real Persian, right?
no,
yeah, it's
it's
just,
just
but yeah, I think it was one of
No,
those.
this came out of.
Lawson's auction house.
There you go.
No,
it
but-
might be ours.
be
Might,
right.
yeah, it might be. I don't think so. I don't
But
think they
before
have one.
that-
and ours was pretty threadbare by the end.
It came out of the State Library down in Sydney.
All right. There you go.
Yep.
Lastly, Penny Wong, as Foreign Minister, if I go on like a bucks party to Bali and find myself in a situation where no amount of baksheesh can get me out of a jail cell, when do I start becoming a priority for the Foreign Minister?
Man, can people just stop? Please don't do stupid stuff there.
Well-
Please. Like, occasionally I just like, really? Why have we done this? Why has someone done this? But I want to say first about, because I know Bali is featured in the Bucks night. I think we've got to revisit our plans. I don't know whether someone had added a journo by mistake to the chat, but too much has got out publicly, so we're going to have to go back to the drawing board, I reckon.
Okay. So you are hosting, you will confirm that you are organising Albo's Bucks.
Well, I'm just going to do it even if he hasn't asked me, I reckon.
Well,
Port Macquarie.
I would have thought that's how you would meet most local members around the country you haven't met before. It's like, hi Penny, I have a constituent who has
Who's done something,
who
yeah.
has been arrested in.
No, look, there are people who get into a lot of trouble through not, who are in really difficult circumstances through no fault of their own.
Yeah.
And obviously, you really want to focus on helping them. Then I think there's the run of the mill stuff where stuff
Definitely fault
happens.
of
You've
their
just
own.
got stuff happens, and you've just got to make people got to. We help every Australian.
So if I go to Afghanistan and take a photograph with a rocket launcher, I'm not a concern of yours. Like, I'm no longer a priority.
No, we help every Australian. We try and help every Australian. And actually, there's some amazing work that gets done. Some of it, and some of the most heartwarming moments I've had as Foreign Minister have been in the consular area. So that's when you're representing people, helping people. I got to meet Sean Turnell, who we got out of Myanmar, and Cheng Lei, who came out of Beijing. So that was pretty moving. Yeah.
Well, Penny Wong, thank you for being so generous with your time today. I understand you've got a lot to do because I suppose being Foreign Minister doesn't really go into caretaker mode during an election.
No, it doesn't really stop. So, but it's been great. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you both in person.
Thanks for coming out to Western Queensland.
Good to be here.